Hello, Yo Coco. Hey, everyone, we're live. Okay. Woo, we made it. I have all different setup and things going on today, but hi, welcome to the clock out. Today we are talking about how it's a scam. Okay. We are talking about essentially all things toxic job red flags today. And I'm telling you that from the perspective of somebody who used to be a recruiter, used to do a lot of hiring, and some of the things that I knew honestly were red flags in my interview process in my organization, and kind of some of the ways that I would honestly frame those for candidates, to really share like, hey, this is what's really going on. These are the challenges. These are the issues that we have here. So I'm super excited to be doing this live. Thank you for joining me today. If you're here, just let me know in the comments. So just say hello, say where you're calling in from, say why you're joining, whatever, or just say hey, whatever. We're chill here. But I would love to know that you're here. So just say hello in the chat. Also, if you are enjoying this live, it would be greatly appreciated if you like it, if you share it with somebody else that you feel like could benefit from this content, because yeah, I feel like as Black women, we definitely do get stuck in that toxic job search cycle. So this live, before we get started, as I wait for more people to come in because we've just started, my whole thing. So my name is Mercedes. I'm the career love coach. I am a certified D&I and HR professional. I am now a full-time career and business coach specifically for Black women. And so my goal in this life is to really support the career and business growth of Black women. My goal is to see Black women thrive, see Black women really enjoy the work that they do. Hey, Melissa, and hopefully I'm saying your name right. Let me know if I'm not. Hey, Joshua, welcome into the live. But yeah, I'm just super excited to kind of be talking about this, and I'm super excited that you all are here. And my clock out is basically the stream that I do weekdays at 6. I try to do it every single day unless your girl's having a rough day. Unless people think I was busy. But I asked my friends over on LinkedIn like what they really wanted to talk about, and they were all things toxic jobs. So that's what we're talking about today. So before we get started, I want to know, because I made a video the other day and I said, I was talking about this toxic job search cycle, and I was hey Ella, welcome into the live. I was basically saying you start a job, you start your job search, you're really optimistic, you're excited to move. Hey Nicole. Hey from Texas. I can't see you. Hi from Texas. Nalissa. Yes. Thank you for letting me know how to say your name correctly. But yeah, so we get into the cycle where we're excited about the next role. We maybe have come from a toxic environment before. And we're all excited about the new opportunities, right? And we get there and we're like, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks, whatever it is. We just get there and it's not really what we thought it was going to be, quote unquote. It's a sham. Oh, hi, Cheryl. Is that how I say your name too? I need to get all the names right today. Hey, welcome from New Jersey. Good to see you. And hey, Sharon. But yeah, so we start and then it's like, this isn't it. I shouldn't be here. I don't want to be here. This is terrible. This is toxic. And so I want to know, like, what's the shortest period of time that you've been in a role that you figured out that it was toxic? My shortest period of time is maybe 8 months. I had a good run compared to some of you all that were commenting on that video like, oh, it only took me a couple days. It only took me a week or whatever. But mine is actually about 8 months. So let me know in the chat what you feel like is the shortest period of time that you've ever transitioned into a new job and then figured out it was toxic. And welcome in, Drainy. I'm super excited to see all of you here today. Oh, Cheryl. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Hello, Cheryl. Welcome into the live. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it before we really get started. I want to preface with this. A lot of times, and this is true about my story, I'm just not calling you out. I'm calling all of us out. Hey, Nikki, welcome into the live. Is that like a lot of times we just kind of ignore those red flags. We make reasons. Melissa said a month. yeah. It doesn't take a lot that long most of the time. I feel like I've been a little bit fortunate. And some of that for me has been like just, how long it took me to like really start to interact with all of the people. Oh, McDonald's is horrible customer service. Okay. Yeah. That's rough. Okay. Woo. Okay. Yeah. because I feel like it's some environments too. I'm not going to say that every environment that is in a particular industry like fast food or retail, but I feel like it's so much more typical there or like normalized for that to just be part of the culture. Woo. Hey, Nikki. Hey, Classy K. I love that name. Okay, let me take a sip of coffee. But I'm saying that to say, like, I have absolutely like ignored some of those red flags in myself and in my job, just kind of chalking up of like, oh, I want this opportunity or I really want to move forward in my career, whatever that is. And so I've just kind of ignored them and like moved forward anyway. So if you take nothing from this live, your number one goal is to not read or like explain away anything or rationalize anything that you see or hear. That is going to get you in trouble. Okay, so Dr. Faye said, I had a colleague who stayed one day and explained to her husband she had to get away from that manager, and he agreed. You know what? Not that being your colleague, Dr. Faye. I'm cracking up at that just a little bit. Because not the one day and not the cosign from the husband being like, get out of there. And it's wild sometimes, especially if you're coming from a place that either you were relatively happy or you were excited. So that's definitely been my place. Now I was in my story, like it was definitely in the same organization where I just had a shift in managers. Yeah, it's rough. But yeah, so we definitely we out there collecting red flags in our job search. And I don't want you to do that. I'm going to talk to you about how to not collect those and really pull those out. So for me, I'll start by telling my story. So, I'm just not calling you out. Okay. I have, my entire career has been in human resources until I switched over to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hey, Denise, welcome into the live. But even with that, I was really in a space where I was already doing all of the D&I work. And then when I moved into D&I, I was actually focusing a lot in human resources. So it was kind of this great connection between all of my skills. But anyway, so I worked at I worked at what I know you're gonna say it. The family-oriented company, right? We're gonna talk about the family-oriented company today. Okay, but that was definitely me. I was working for the family-oriented company. I was growing there. It was a lot of excitement about me and my role. I'm also going to talk about a couple of the things that were flags, like going into that, like that were really a sign of, the future of being tokenized in like the role. But I was in this space where, I was just starting my HR career. I was really excited about like all the growth, the things that I was learning. But it was definitely a family-oriented organization, right? Where I was wearing multiple hats. You see all these code words I'm going to come and I'm going to talk about. But the multiple hats, being the only Black woman, and like over time, the organization, I was definitely say that I was there for over a year before things really got a little rough. But overall, like I had really enjoyed my work there. And then just a lot of changes with leadership and management. That's going to be another thing. Really just began to create a space that was really no longer a safe space or where I could even do my best work because I was just dealing with all of the workplace drama. And so I went there and I was like, you know what? We're done. I don't ever want to have this experience again. I don't ever want to be crying in my office. I just want to exist and love what I do because I truly do love human resources. And so I left that and I went into another role where I was focusing in on recruitment. And I really love that. I love the team. I love the organization. I love the work. I love my manager. I was really, really happy every single day. And things were just kind of like working out for me. My manager at the time ended up leaving. We had a new leader come in. And so I wanted the promotion. I wanted my manager's job. I applied for my manager's job. I received my manager's job and I ignored a lot of things in that. So don't just think because you already are in this space that is going to save you from the red flags because you kind of know what you're getting into. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Okay. It really is something that can really challenge you moving forward. And just because you feel like you have more information doesn't necessarily mean that it will save you from that toxic job. So in that opportunity, there were a lot of things that were really not that were really not great about the leadership structure and the leadership changes that were happening, like, yes, in my direct reporting line, but in the organization overall. I'm wearing a shirt. But that being said, there were also, like, I worked at a public employer in Florida, right? So all of those changes that were happening from a legislature point, okay, we know what's going on in Florida. we know it's been going on in Florida, right? But all of the challenges in Florida about the legislature, anti-DE&I, Republicans being Republicans, where we are today. Like all of those things are really coming down in my day to day. And I was absolutely one of those like, hey, sugar bear. I was absolutely one of those like black women on the glass, not the glass cliff. Is it the glass? Yeah, the glass cliff. Sorry. Anyway, where you're like kind of going off into the unknown by yourself. And in that role, I was really in a place where I just felt a lot of anxiety around my work, depression. It's where I ended up because I was having such a hard time managing the workplace stress. That's when I finally was able to understand that I was neurodivergent. So I went to get help for that. And then I pivoted into another role, which is much more positive. And while I won't go into all of the details of that, I was definitely experiencing some things that if I had really looked at that really strongly in my application process, I might have noticed them a little bit more. So and so I was in a place where that role was no longer in alignment for me either. So all of that to be said, I'm going to tell you some of the things that I've learned. I'm going to tell it to you from my experience as a Black woman. Hey, Wince, welcome into the live. Hey, Sean Bay. So I'm going to tell you about the things that I have learned, but I'm also going to tell you about that from like the perspective of a recruiter, and sometimes the ways that organizations describe their own skills to their own experiences and cultures and working dynamics that can really let you know that it's a toxic job. Okay, I talked a little bit. Now I'm going to look at the comments. Sorry, I was like getting all distracted. So Cheryl said sometimes being a family-oriented business, I think is what you're saying, is not a benefit afforded to everyone. Yeah, I think it's really interesting for this comment because a lot of the times, like I know like the family oriented thing gets a really bad rap. I don't know, like, people just hate it. It's like an immediate no. Like there are truly some family oriented organizations out there. Like my mom is one. She's a Black woman in business. She owns that organization. They are truly a family oriented business where family comes first. That's what a family oriented business should be. What I think is family oriented business today is people be in your business and people don't have boundaries. That's what a lot of the times people are talking about. But yes, being in a family oriented business is absolutely not a benefit to everyone, because we think about like, I think a lot of times about how Black women get into careers that, are, they're passion driven, right? And a lot of times those careers are more likely to be unstable, more likely to be less paid. I think about all of the Black women who are in, working in government right now, and diversity, equity, inclusion, in roles that really support the world, that are grant funded right now, that are in a challenging thing. Like, they're in a challenging space right now because of the like lack of stability in that, right? And so we don't always have the access to be in the spaces that provide us the most stability. But also at the same time, it's less likely that those small family oriented businesses have Black women in representation, right? Because they're often smaller. They don't have the same stability. So if they are an inclusive environment, it's kind of like that risk of being in that small organization. But it is also that a lot of times, because, well, Black women, of course, are the highest growing number of entrepreneurs, but also at the same time, it's still prevalent, right, that most of those small organizations are going to be pretty much all white people, right? Like, let's be honest. And so then that doesn't create a great space for us either. So there's lots of dynamics to this. I can go into it a lot, just based on the experience. But yeah, it's not always going to benefit everyone, particularly if you really actually can't afford to be like, I'm going to work in these types of organizations, which don't often pay. We'll talk about the pay. And small organization doesn't always mean that they can't pay you. Okay. So Nalissa, sorry, I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. Nalisa, excuse me. I had a familiar experience with wearing multiple hats. Management wanted me to take on multiple roles, and it got too stressful. Environment was very toxic as well. Like, yes. When an organization like wants you to do a little bit of everything, it means a couple of the things. Like, sometimes it means that they just don't have the appropriate staffing, and so then they're going to try and run you into the ground to get all of the things done, and they're going to see that as a benefit, right? So, okay, I'm gonna look at that in just a minute. But they're gonna like run you into the ground because they think it's gonna be a benefit, right? We know that as Black women, we are often a lot more productive and we get a lot more done than our colleagues. So in that case, we almost, and I've done this too, right? Like I will take on stuff like because I'm excited and I want to do it, I want to learn. But also that kind of creates this cycle where sometimes part of that cycle is us because we take on all of that work. And we don't set the boundaries. And then when it's too much, we like really can't handle it. And then they've already become accustomed to us doing that. So then when we want to pull back because we're like, oh, actually, this is my bad. I did too much stuff. Like then we're penalized for it because we're then underperforming. Like it's wild. Like I've seen this happen a lot. I mean, it's happening to me. It's absolutely happened to me a lot too, where I was at the point where I was like, I need help. And we do that. But yeah, and so sometimes then it just means like they're willing to take advantage of you. They're willing to be understaffed. They're willing to underpay you for that work. They're not wanting to recognize you for that. And sometimes it just means disorganization, right? Because I have absolutely talk to hiring managers and people that just thought it was normal to put two jobs together. Like this is not normal. People aren't designed to work this way. Now it's different if like you're like, oh, this job, you know, we don't have enough work for this job and as well as this job, like we're growing. And so these two things are coming together or we are really hiring somebody who can do both. But it's like that is a totally different story than trying to put two full-time jobs on one person. Okay. Cheryl said, I'm actually referencing a maternal and child health organization and some staff receiving a lot of empathy around their needs, stresses. On the other hand, BIPAC staff. Yes, this is so true. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too, because one of the things that I find that happens to Black women in an interview is that often our skill set and our experiences are much more likely to be like questioned or digged into. And I think that's part of it, right? Where like other people, non-BIPOC people, not Black, non-Black people are given the benefit of the doubt for whatever it is that they're requesting or asking for. And then when it's us that needs more documentation, it needs proof. Like the bias is requiring a different standard, a higher standard of us a lot of the time. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to break this live down. Hey, Jelaine. Jelaine, I think. So I'm trying to break this live down into like the different areas of the job search. So, you know, keep sharing thoughts or whatever. I will absolutely react to this. I do want this to feel more like a discussion rather than just me talking at you, but I'm like distracted. Okay. So just absolutely let me know. But I wanted to talk about the description, like, so each element of the job search and what we're going through. So the first thing that I'm really talking about here, not Notion freezing on me. That's where my notes are. The first one is that I want to talk about things that we can see in the job description. And then I'm going to talk about like, you know, maybe once we've entered, you know, like a phone screen or some type of discussion, or maybe even done some research, some job details, like things about the specific job that are flags. Then I'm going to talk about the interview process, like things that happen in the interview, which is going to come up with some of those things about like the different standards. And Nalisa said, I agree, automatically disqualified in terms of skill set. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of those things. We're going to talk about like how that really shows up for Black women in the interview. And then I'm going to talk about presence, things that you can really look at in terms of overall social presence that really impact us. And that can be a way for us discerning like whether or not this is an organization that we should really be in and working for. So I'm going to get into it, but while I take a quick break, like one, always know that if you have any questions for me as I'm going through anything that I can clarify, like let me know. Also, if you're really enjoying this, it really helps me continue to grow this live. I'm excited and I love doing this. But I of course wanted to grow, right? So if you are enjoying this, make sure that you like this live, make sure you share the live, make sure you follow. If you are on LinkedIn and TikTok, you can continue to hit all the likes, hit all the love. And it really supports the live and helps it get pushed out to more people. So, okay. So let's talk about the job description. So a lot of times in the job description, like, and I'm saying this as a recruiter, right? We will put things in a job description to talk about the organization's culture, right? A lot of times when we're going through the job description as Black women, one of the first things that we look at is the qualifications. I know I'm calling y'all out. The first thing that y'all look at is the qualifications because we are so used to and conditioned to not think about whether or not this role is the right role for us. We are conditioned to figure out like whether we can really fit into this role. Hey, Carly J, welcome in. Um, so a lot of the times, we have a totally different, we've already unbalanced the scales in this by trying to figure out whether or not we fit into what an organization is requesting versus whether or not they fit and meet our standards and our requirements in a job description. So instead of y'all first looking at the qualifications, actually ignore those qualifications, because half the time we do not have a really valid review of our own skill sets and we screen ourselves out of applications. So don't even look at those. Okay. Just apply, right? Just apply. Um, but what I would say is, that a lot of times in that first part of the job description, they will start talking about what the culture is, what they're expecting of the role, what makes you a good fit for the role. And before you, Lisa said I'm guilty of that. I know a lot of y'all are guilty of that, and I be eating y'all up. Like, just apply. You first. You first. That's the first thing about getting out of the toxic job search cycle. You first. But so there's a lot of content that recruiters and hiring managers will put in that job description that tell you a lot about the culture of an organization. And often we avoid those. We look right at the qualifications. We look right at the job description, which doesn't mean they don't matter. But I'm just going to list off a couple of words that are always flags for me as I look at it. And like, y'all can let me know, like, do y'all clock these? Okay. So the first one is fast pace. We talked a little bit about the second one, which is family oriented. The third one is that multiple hats thing. The next one is like guru, anything where they're using like these weird words like guru, ninja, like just words that are just like, okay, why are we talking about people about, like, this is a job. It's not like this is not a TV show. This is a job. But anything like that. And I can't think of any of the other ones, but like absolutely the guru, the ninja, whatever. Like, it seems like y'all are looking a unicorn. Y'all are looking for something, and it's not really based on qualifications. So what does it mean to be a ninja? Okay, I'm losing the plot. I'm coming back. Hey Valerie, welcome to the live. Self-starter is one of those. A competitive environment. Oh my gosh, if I see a competitive environment, I hate ninja too. I hate ninja so much. But if I see anything like a competitive environment, I don't want to compete with anybody at work. As Black women, people are trying to compete with us and we're not trying to compete with them. I don't need you to tell me in a job description about a competition, okay? And the other one is growth opportunities. So I will not be naming which organization this was, but there was a role in which I was recruiting, and the role was all about traveling. It was 100% travel. We would be sending people from site to site to site all over the country. And how we positioned that was a fast-paced growth environment that provided a lot of travel, right? And now I'm not going to lie to you, there were plenty of people that really thrived in that environment. They didn't want to be home. They didn't, they like, I had people that's like, listen, I don't want to go home. Listen, I travel with y'all all the time. I don't even have an apartment. I don't even have a home at this point. Okay. I'm just out there with you hanging out. Okay. And it's like, okay. I mean, that's cool. That's cool. Like, that's your thing. But for a lot of people, that was actually a really terrible work environment because they were always working with different people. People were, upset. We, of course, screened all the people that were going on these things, but there were just a variety of people. It was a lot of contract work. So, like, all of those individuals weren't, like, always the people that kept a job. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it's like, oh, okay, you don't keep a job. And I'm not talking about Black women, okay? Because we know all of the issues that we deal with, okay, for why we sometimes can't keep a job. What I'm talking about is those people who really don't keep a job because they're cussing out people. Okay, right? Those type of people will be there because it's not a desirable job in a lot of ways, right? But talking about those growth opportunities was kind of promising this opportunity to say, hey, if you come here and you really like, what is that word? Like, cut your teeth. Hey, Elle, welcome into the live. Like, you kind of prove yourself here. Then you can do other stuff, right? And I feel like that automatically like sets you up to knowing like, hey, if it's a growth opportunity, like, why is it that you're looking for people who are looking for growth opportunities, right? Like, most organizations are looking for people who already know how to do the job. So why is it that you're looking for somebody that's looking for a growth opportunity? It's probably because they can't pay you, because the job is not desirable, because the culture is not great, or maybe they've had a really hard time filling the position. I feel like, yes, again, there are some organizations out there that are truly like good with hiring and training up people, right? Like that's absolutely how I started off my HR career as an intern, right? But sometimes that growth opportunity is really just their way of saying like, okay, we're going to kind of take advantage of you, or you're going to kind of go into this role that's going to give you hopefully potential other opportunities, but this role isn't really desirable. You feel me? That fast-paced environment, like sometimes that really does mean that just the organization just does things at a fast pace, but I've never actually seen an organization that really did things at a fast pace talk about it that way. They usually talk about it like from a standpoint of they're efficient, they're organized, they have a clear strategy, right? Those are things they have clear direction. That is how an organization that does fast pace well talks about, right? Like they're not spinning their wheels, they're not dragging their feet, they're not wasting time, they're just moving forward. A lot of those organizations are really innovative. They're organizations that roll out products and services and innovative things at a really fast pace, but they don't describe their culture as fast paced. The people that describe their culture as fast paced are often the people that, they're doing things last minute. Everything's an emergency. Nothing is well organized or done. And they are expecting you to just figure it out, pick up the pace, get it together and move forward. Like that is the issue in this. Hey, Shay, welcome in. Nalisa said, I know about the competition drama as well in the role I was in. Like, yeah, I'm not into drama. Yeah. I feel like that competition, like, what does your organization and your organization's culture have to be for you to feel like you need to talk about competition? I feel like the only time, and I don't even think that, right? Because I was about to say, like, I feel like the only time that may be okay is like for sales roles. But then I feel like, okay, if you're talking about competition like that for sales roles, like maybe this is kind of like a really cutthroat kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like should your salespeople really be in competition? Like, don't they have their own regions? Like, don't they have their own things to do? Why would I be competing? It's not about incentives. It's about the competition. Like, why is it you against me, right? We can all grow together. I want to be in a growth oriented, positive environment. Why would there be a competition? Yes. Okay. Cavell said communication is lacking. And then other LinkedIn user, it doesn't tell me who you are, but hi LinkedIn user, it says you're so right about that. Fast pace, innovative, ever evolving. Didn't make that connection till now. Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, like I said, they're organizations, they can both be fast paced. They can really in practice be fast paced, but how they describe it is more, if they're saying that they're fast paced, they're more likely to be toxic. If they say they're innovative or committed to continuous improvement, that might be more positive workplace. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The multiple hats thing, I want to talk about that a little bit. I talked about it a little bit before, but like the multiple hats is often like, I feel like organizations who are dedicated to taking advantage of you are the people that say they have multiple hats, right? Because a lot of times they just, again, I talked about this at the beginning, but if you're just joining, like they have a lot of times they don't have the appropriate staffing, or they just don't have a good organization. And so therefore they're asking people to do things that are outside of their job description, or they're asking people to do work that isn't part of a normal job. And so those types of things, when I was quote unquote wearing multiple hats, that is when I was most overworked, like in my position, right? So again, I don't know about that. Okay. It feels hard to connect if the environment is more fast paced. So I think this is a thing that I'm saying here of like, you can have a fast paced environment that is well organized and well done. And that's, yeah, organized, like there's communication, there's fast rollouts. But that most of the time organizations who are that do not describe themselves as fast paced. Like that's just what I've seen in my experience of like how things are written. And so I know it feels hard to connect, but I would say if you see fast paced listed anywhere in a job description, there are probably some of these other like red flags, like the self starter, the multiple hats, those types of things I think are really going to cue you in. sometimes what I see in a job description is like the job description doesn't make sense. Like it feels like they pulled together all these different types of jobs and they put it together and they just made it work, which I feel like is, again, everything that an organization does is indicative of their culture and how they're organized, right? So if they're pulling all of these things together and they're also fast paced, it probably means like that's what your life is going to be every day. There's just going to be all of these things thrown together that you're asked to put together in a fast paced way, right? I want to talk about, yeah, so I always almost see that as a red flag. I almost always see that as a bad thing. Hey Jay, welcome into the live. So yeah, there's not a lot of things. It's okay to be like to like a fast pace. Like I do actually work. Like I actually really drives me wild when I have an organization that they just go really slow. I'm like, why are we going this slow? Like it doesn't make any sense. So it's different. Yeah, it's just a mentality, I think. The last one that I'm going to talk about, why the family oriented thing, I think is really a challenge a lot of the times, because what I will see, this is what I will see is the most damaging for Black women. And these are based on calls with Black women, right? The family-oriented organization does not have boundaries. What they mean is that we just come together and we act ourselves. And I don't mean that in a good way. Like, I don't mean that in a good way. Like, I want everybody to come to work and really like enjoy what they do and be able to come to work as them as their full selves. But that doesn't mean that, you know how you have that statement where people are like, oh yeah, it's the people that you love the most that you really don't treat the best, right? I don't feel that in my life, but it's those ones is like, okay, well, I'm having a bad day, so it's like, I can't go to work and cuss out my boss, but I'll go home and cuss out my partner, right? Because I know they're going to deal with it. And I feel like it's one of those things where it's like the behavior that's quote unquote really not professional a lot of the time is co-signed in a family environment because we're family. The other thing is that there are like lack of boundaries. So what I found of like family oriented companies is a lot of the times like a word for like we create these networks of people that if you are family in a social setting, then I'm more about your advancement. You know what I'm saying? So if you come over to my house on the weekend and hang out with me and my family and we go to get drinks and we go out on the boat together, then you're part of this family, right? You're part of this organization. We're family. We know each other personally, maybe more than we should. And so it kind of creates that like assimilation of like people coming together to set a culture that's based on really appeasing to somebody socially, right? It's not about like the family outside of work. It's about saying, oh, well, we more operate like a dysfunctional family than we do like an organization. And so therefore we like co-sign all of those things that happen, right? Yeah. Of course, when an applicant is desperate for a job to pay their bills, they will agree, yes, I don't mind wearing multiple hats, or yes, I work well in a fast-paced environment. Yes, Cheryl. Desperation is the enemy of finding an employment opportunity that will nurture you and will not destroy your sense of self-worth and confidence. Like, this is everything. So this is y'all always want to talk about toxic environments because we deal with a lot. I'm not even trying to say that like in a bad way. We deal with a lot, but I talked about like if you go back, if you all are watching on LinkedIn, I know where you all are, but I have 2 other videos that I've done talking about the toxic job search cycle. And it is often because we're in those points of desperation that we continue through the cycle. And I do understand a lot of the times when we're like, oh my gosh, I just got to get out of this really bad environment, or I need to find stability. But what I find, I'm saying this like because I see Black women do this all the time. Like I say this with love, but they will stay. Like it doesn't just become a bridge or a band-aid or just a moment to like get the stability. Like y'all will stay longer than you need to. I think about that like when I moved into like I always say, like I'm saying this because it's experience, but I'm also like, I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, I promise. I'm just saying it's because it's what I see. And so I think about that role when I moved into management, and I definitely stayed way too long. I stayed, way past what I should have been dealing with. There were a lot of moments for me where I wasn't really getting the growth opportunities that I felt like I needed to be able to grow. And that is limiting, because if you are staying somewhere for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but then you don't have the accomplishments or the experiences to enable you to get to that next level, whether it's projects, transformations, you're being able to be a visionary, like especially in a management or a leadership role. If you can't have those experiences, like, it is going to hold you back. So you can't stay too long if you're going to make like a just for now decision. And what I find is that we will stay longer. But yes, like, it's absolutely important that unless you are in really like dire straits with a role, to not just hop just to get out of something, because often we're hopping to something that's just as bad, and we're co-signing it, and we're saying it's okay because we need that job or whatever. So yeah, it's painful. Cheryl also said family oriented also means that sometimes those staff that don't have children partner expect to carry additional load because they don't have a family, or chosen not to have a family. Yeah. And I also see that it's like, it's a justification. Yeah. It creates a second level of justification, right? Because we're family owned, then we're in everybody's business. And because we're family owned, we know a lot about your personal details or what you're doing or what you've got going on. And as a result, then we make certain assumptions about you as a person because we expect you to share yourself. And as Black women who often have a lot of the workplace trauma of people, like, using things that we share against them, like weaponizing us for personal details that we shared, using stereotypes based on like how we showed up. Like, it's hard for us to go into work and be like, oh, I had a hard day today, because people are going to use that against you. Oh, you're so angry. Like, we can't do that. And so I'm not that person at work. I'm going to choose to still show up like as my authentic self. Ooh, I might need some lip balm. I'm going to still choose to show up like, yeah, second level justification. It really is. It really is a second level justification. But yeah, so the things that we share at work like are weaponized and used against us. And then as a result, we feel like we can't go to work as ourselves and share. And so then when we go into these quote unquote family oriented organizations, they expect us to share, and then we're penalized for not sharing because we don't trust you. And it's like, if because of how you're coming at me expecting that you deserve to be in my business, like I'm not coming here for work, is a different thing. And like I said, I don't, that's not necessarily how I view work. I feel like if I go to work, I spend so much time with you. I want to like you, but also at the same time, like, this shouldn't be related to my success here, right? Like, it should be an option for me to want to be in community with you because you offer me a great place to work. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah. I find that being in a social setting to be unprofessional, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I think, oh, thank you so much for the hearts, La Jefa. I think that's how I say your name. Hi, welcome in. Um, but I think one of my big things I talk about a lot is like how professionalism is used in like a punitive way. I mean, it's used in a punitive way for a lot of people that just don't fit into a culture. Not just Black people, but particularly for Black women, that comes up a lot, and it feeds into a lot of the like anti-Black stereotypes, right? Because we get to define professionalism through like a white lens. That's what happens a lot of the time. Oh yeah, I got it right. Woo! I got 1 out of 3. We're working on it. Oh, welcome into the live. I'm so glad you're here. But yeah, what was I saying? Oh, professionalism, right? So professionalism is often defined as things that are professionalism from a white lens, and then or sometimes the goalpost for professionalism changes, right? And so a lot of times when I see people like organizations have a lot of definitions around what professionalism is, I always feel like that's just a way to like co-sign kind of discriminating against somebody for not fitting into some norm that they have. And so the interesting thing is like, I definitely have a form of professionalism where I really define that as professionalism is providing a space for us to all show up and work in a professional environment and do our best work, right? And so there's a lot of things that professionalism, like hair color, piercings, like what your desk looks like, how you communicate, that has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to do the job. And so that's why I feel like where we need to come from of how we're defining professionalism, because I feel like not only is professionalism used by people who are not Black, but it is used within the Black community to basically say that we shouldn't advocate for the challenges or the problems that we have, right? Yeah, norms. It's all norms, right? And so a lot of times, like what I've had, I mean, I have this in my family. I've had this with other individuals that I work with. Hey, Miranda. Hey, Blossom. Welcome into the live. But I've had it where it's like, oh, you can't do that. You can't speak up about that. You can't talk about, because at the end of the day, like, that's not the norm. And I even get that from, honestly, from other Black folks. And it's challenging, right? Because it's like, I get that a lot of the norms that we adhered to in the past was necessary for us to kind of enter these spaces, and to increase our, our career, our professional, opportunities. But like, let's actually see what equity and access looks like today without us having to adhere to the opinions of professionalism. Yeah. And so for me, I find that if I'm able to be in a social setting and there's still boundaries about like what is professional for us to work towards, like if you say something to me in that in that social setting that would lead me to not trust you, to feel like you're a safe person to work around, that is what I feel is unprofessional, right? And so there's always boundaries with that, right? But for me personally, I'm totally okay. I really like getting to know my coworkers outside of work. Okay, catching up with comments. Yeah, so this is interesting. So being in a social setting has historically been a way of networking and building relationships. However, because so many of us BIPOC have spread out and are in so many of these work environments, they didn't expect for us to be in the rules change. That's really interesting, because we talk a lot about, this like concept of the old boys, or the what is it called? The Old Boys Club? Am I mixing that up? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, right? The old boys crew, whatever. I feel like I'm saying the wrong word. Maybe it's right. Anyway, but like them coming in and them having their own social networks and us having to adhere to move into those spaces, right? And again, like a lot of times that family oriented, we are totally off track, it's fine. That social element of the work, um like it is then made to be a requirement for growth, for movement, right? So what I'll see is like, okay, like who's getting promoted to people that go out to those social events with the CEO. Now, whether or not they are, people of color, Black women, Black men, whatever, just means that if you kind of adhere to that, you know, then you're able to be promoted. Then you're kind of seen as a desirable person to move forward. I had a post on LinkedIn the other day that I was talking about, like, why is it that it wasn't a lot the other day? I think it was more than a month ago. Girl, what? Or I was talking about this idea of like, we are labeled as difficult to work with when in fact we are not difficult to work with. The people who are actually difficult to work with are never labeled that way. And it's because they're difficult to work with, but they adhere to whatever norms. Yeah. Woo. But to go back to what Cheryl was saying, it's like, okay, so now because we're growing, we're taking up more spaces and we are creating the change, right? I think about like a lot of that for DEI, right? Which if you're here, you don't know what DEI is. It's not just for Black people, right? But like this idea that like because we have more representation, we have more power to advocate for change and create these networks and build these relationships. And that's a scary thing for people who are so used to just the old boys network always working. I feel like that's still the wrong word, but y'all know what I'm saying. Like the network of non-Black people, of non-BIPOC people. I don't be trying to say the palm colored word because it will sometimes get things blocked. Hey, Digi Millie, what a cute name. Okay. Catching up with the comments. So when speaking out, sometimes step on people's toes, especially with a lot of non-BIPOC individuals. We now need to participate in the shaping of professional norms and standards. Yes. So that's absolutely true, right? Like I made a video, was it yesterday when I did that? I don't remember. I made this video talking about like sometimes I'll have people say like, "Oh, should we do personality tests for you like our new hires and things like that?" And I'm like, "No, that has nothing to do with the ability to do work, right?" I think if we are going to continue to use professionalism as a measure of whether somebody should work in an organization, we have to define truly what professionalism is in a non-biased way, right? Like what is it? How can we remove any, and I think that's a lot of times how we get the coded language, right? Of, what does it mean? Like, we'll have things about how a lot of times that happens for Black people, right? Communication as a barrier, right? And, it's one of those things where it's like, if we are not truly defining what we need from the workplace, like, can you communicate with others effectively to get a job done? Then it doesn't matter if you come to work speaking AAVE, whatever, right? Like, that is a language that people understand. Okay. So you can too. And it's not impeding my ability to do my job, right? Like, let's get into it. But yeah, so there's a lot of things. Okay. Your girl is, okay. I don't know how to make these go away. I feel, okay. Sorry. It was on the screen. I got a little distracted. Hey, Blossom, welcome in. Welcome into the live. Okay. So I got a little distracted talking about all of these things. I'm definitely not getting through all of these. I'm going to be, so if you're just joining, I do these lives every weekday at 6. So I was planning on doing interviewing tomorrow. So I think I'm going to do, so I was planning on doing like screening questions for interviewing tomorrow, but what I might just talk about are things that you hear in the interview, so I can kind of be able to go through all of those, because your girl got a coaching call at 7. Okay, so I have to get off by 7. But let's talk about like a couple of things for the job details. So one of the things, like as I'm reading through or as I'm speaking to somebody about the job, things that I will be listening to. So sometimes lack of structure is really important. So sometimes we'll have a position that we are considering, and they'll tell us like, oh, it's evolving position. It's a new position. So there's not a lot of structure. There's not a lot of things. You'll be able to come in and like define things. I don't know about that. Like, in hindsight, I don't know about that, because I feel like, yes, you could have somebody who's coming in, and I've seen this happen both ways, right? You could have somebody come in that's expected to lead a team or create the vision, like as a leader, right? Or as somebody who has like full ownership of their role. But the fact of the matter is that if you are like aware of how the organization operates, or like what's going on, you will still know a little bit more about the structure. Like, what are the constraints? What can be done or can't be done? What are our deliverables? What do we want to accomplish, right? And so I feel like if there is so little lack of structure about what the role is expected to do, like you go to a job description and you can't really, hey, Slick, welcome in. Like, oh, hey, totally Nelly. I miss some of y'all joining. Welcome in. Like if you are missing some of that structure, I think that's like a really clear sign that they just don't have it. Now, why is that a flag? Because a lot of times Black women, we come in and we see problems, we fix them, we resolve them, we drive. Dr. Faith said, I don't trust new positions or roles. Get it, Dr. Faith. That's right. Don't trust them. And like, I'm not saying like organizations do new things all the time. I'm not saying, yeah, I know a lot of times as Black women, we're really setting ourselves up for like a real bad time if we are the first or the new, right? Because people don't like us coming in and telling them what to do. What is wrong with that? Y'all hire us and say, you want us to tell you what to do. We're going to tell you and we're going to do it well. And it's going to be so good. But you didn't really want to hear that. Y'all just wanted to dance. But yeah, like, so a lot of the times we, as Black women, even if we're coming in that role and like our white counterparts came in, I'm supposed to say our palm colored counterparts came in and like did the same thing, we're still penalized, right? I was thinking about like this dynamic, right? That glass cliff, right? Where Black women are all the thing, right? But then we're penalized for it, or we're not given the right resources. We're not given access to the room. We're not able to speak to somebody. We're not given the budget, like all of the things, right? And so when there's a lack of structure, it almost is double fold, because not only is the organization poorly equipped to do this, but then the Black woman takes the bulk of and like the brunt of the issue, because then when they're uncomfortable with the change, what they don't like what's recommended, sometimes people have egos, like they didn't want to see you actually win. That's happened to me a lot. Like going into an organization, doing something really innovative, really cool, really different, and they just didn't want to see Black women win. So then all of the issue, like, oh, you can't do that, that can't happen, you can't get that, like That really happens to us a lot. That has happened to me, right? And then you become like the victim, you become the fall person for all of the issues, right? When in reality, like maybe there was nothing wrong with that, or they were really never structured, or they really were never expecting somebody to move forward with that anyway. I really feel like that is a glass cliff. Melissa said, right. Right? Right. Like that is so this is rough. We be out here struggling. Okay. Um, the other one, I think this is important because like girls running out of time. Your girl can talk, but it was good. We were having some really good conversations, and that is what I want. This is what I want for the clock out at 6 o'clock every day. So the other thing is like transparency. So I feel like a lot of time, when we have an organization that says they're transparent and they give us all of their dirty laundry, right? So this happened to me. Oh, hi, QR code scanner. But this happened to me where, like, so on the other side, where, well, it's happened to me from both sides actually. So essentially, like I was hiring for this individual, they were going to be support, like a support position for a very difficult to work with person. Hey, Demetria, welcome into the live. And so basically, I was like, hey, um, like I just want you to know, like this person is, a challenging person to work with. We've had to fill this position multiple times. Like I was really transparent, and a lot of times we're like, oh, well, if they're transparent, it's okay. I know what I'm going into. That does not solve the issue. And sometimes we are like transparent in a more like discreet way. So recruiters will be like, yes, we have a very, we do have a different difficult leader. And people will be like, oh, well, it's just, dealing with leaders, like leaders are difficult to work with. Like stop co-signing or minimalizing or rationalizing away that stuff. Like if they are forward enough to tell you that this person is a difficult person, it is probably 10 times worse. So if that's the rule you got to look at from this. If you see something that's a flag, know that it is worse than whatever they're telling you, right? Because if they're telling you that, they're like, oh, okay, well, this maybe not, well, that maybe won't run them away, or it really is that bad. So we feel the need to tell somebody that, like, it really is that bad. Okay, it really is that bad. And so particularly when there are things that they're informing you about the culture, like this happens a lot where people are talking about, oh, we're changing, we're really shifting this, we're working on this. That means it's a mess. That means it's a mess, and you're going to be in the middle of it, right? So if people say like, oh, we're shifting our culture to be more inclusive, well, what is it now? What do you need to tell me? Okay. So it's just so much of those things where it's like we cannot take, thank you, Cheryl. Good old boys network. There we go. Was I saying? I was like, something is not right. Yes, it is such a no for me, right? And I think the piece of that is like, I was interviewing with an organization, and they had like told me, they were like, yeah, there are some strained relationships, right? They were like some strained relationships. And I was like, okay, well, like tell me more about that. And it's like, we're working on that. And it's like, no, this is not a strained relationship. This isn't something that's just kind of like a little bit difficult to work with. Like, again, if they're telling you this, it's really, 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 really bad. For my girlies who be on TikTok, it's really, 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 really bad. Okay, I'm chronically aligned. Okay. The other thing, like as you go through, is you notice things are changing. So I talked about that a lot. Like they are basic. I mean, I just talked about like the change, but like ultimately as you're moving through the process, or different documents that you receive, different things that you're seeing online, whatever that is, seems like they're changing a lot. Again, a lot of times that like comes from the top, and it's based on the organization not knowing what they want. So I remember I was like, I had a salesperson that I was interviewing with, and we had a lot of shifts in our sales department. And so by the time I would talk to candidates, they would have then restructured the commission process and the regions and everything else. And it was the most stressful thing for me to figure out. Well, that was from more of an operations standpoint of me like hiring people, but like at the end of the day, like the candidates, when they were getting hired, I feel like it's like, okay, the first offer letter I sent you with the commission, if I send you an offer letter and then like a couple days later you're still considering it, I gotta resend you an offer letter. It's just not right. Things are changing, people are non-committal. And I feel like a lot of the time that's really, really clear for Black women who are going through like a recruitment process. So I think this is probably the last point that I will want to say for right now, and then I'll see you all tomorrow. What a cliffhanger. I'll see you all tomorrow at 6, hopefully. But like a lot of times when we see a shift in the interview, it often means that it's about us. So what I find a lot of times is that I would bring in a candidate, I'd say this is the candidate, they'd go through all the interview process and they'd select a candidate, and then they would be like, "Oh, I really like this candidate. I think that candidate is a great fit, but I'm just not sure about a couple of things, right?" And I'd be like, "Okay, well, like, what are the things that you aren't sure about?" And they'd, say something like, "Well, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if it'll be a fit, right? Or I'm not really sure if this candidate has all the right skills in this area." Like, there's usually like a shift, and it's never quite right. And what I find a lot of the times is that those candidates are typically marginalized people, right? People, Black women, LGBTQ plus professionals, people with disabilities, like they want to find something that isn't quite right. And that comes up for Black women a lot in the interview process, where they're doing things like they may dig into your skills. So if they're doing things like getting really specific about a thing, right? Like maybe it's like, what college you went to. Maybe it's like your work history somewhere. And they're like asking you a lot of questions about it. And you're like, why are you asking so many questions? And it's because they're digging for something, right? And people will say that, "Oh, I have just some intuition about something being wrong. I have some intuition about like something being a challenge. Like I just don't feel right." It's like, no, that's your bias. That's your anti-Black bias at work. And you're trying to dig for something that isn't there. And again, I've had that happen so many times. Like there was once an executive candidate. We were interviewing them. The candidate did really well, was just like a phenomenal interviewer, very relationship, was like the perfect individual. I was just all of a sudden receiving all of these social media posts that they were digging up and finding and da da da. They found, and that was the craziest thing about that story, they found somebody else's post. That individual was a palm colored supremacist. I said, "You think this person of color, who we don't know if that's their social media account, you think this person of color has a palm colored supremacist account based on what you talked about today?" Now I know we got some issues out there. There are always challenges, right? But that's what you're finding. That's where you're digging up. So it's like the desperation is there. And so a lot of times when you see that digging, they're really trying to get you, and they're trying to like undermine your experience, right? And so if you have proven everything to them, you've done everything right, and then they can hire you. Sometimes they'll even add in more interviews, more people that you need to talk to, interact with. Oh my gosh. What I need you to do, take this. When you go into an interview, whatever your phone screen is, I need you to ask about what the process is. What is the time that they're taking to respond to you? How many interviews are there? Who are you meeting with? Because if they shift that and change that over time, and you're that top candidate, it's probably because they're trying to dig into your experience, right? Which means you're setting yourself up to go into an environment where people are always going to be questioning your skills, your abilities, what you can do. And we know how we are picked apart by Black women. We are picked apart as Black women, by other individuals. And we know what that looks like to see that at work, right? So if they're picking you apart, your credentials, your job history, all of those things, you're going in with this environment that you're really not enough, that they're questioning you. And like that's usually indicative of like what you're going to experience like in the workplace in general, right? So just, we don't want to do all that. Okay, so I have 2 minutes left. As I exit this call, I want to share an opportunity with you all. And then, of course, I'll answer any questions. So if you're watching this later and you have any questions for me, you're always, 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 forever and ever welcome to ask those questions or reach out to me or whatever. So let me know. But this was such a lovely conversation. I really appreciated you all. If you are here and you're new to my community, you're new to this, you may not know that I am in this space and time of relaunching the Career Love community. So if you're here, you are invited to join me for the Career Love community. I would absolutely love to have you. So the Career Love community is an environment and a safe space that I created for Black women. We talk about these types of things. There's resources and guidance and support to help you move forward in building a successful career or business. And what I talk about is helping you move into the Black Woman Bliss era with a framework and also a safe community of other Black women. So if this sounds like something that really makes sense to you, is something that you feel like would support you in your journey, I would encourage you to join me. There's a QR code on the screen that you can use. Sorry, not on TikTok. On TikTok, y'all got to go to my bio because I can't do it on TikTok. But y'all can join me here. In the portal, I have really a journey that we go on together where I'm teaching you how to identify your Black woman brilliance. I'm teaching you how to fall into career love, build a business that you love, and oops, it's blocked out, but ultimately enter your Black woman bliss era in stage 5. So I hope that if this is something that you're interested in, that you go ahead and scan that QR code, learn more, join me, send me a message, or ask me any questions that you might have if it sounds like something that you might want to do or a community that you want. It is 7:00, so I'm rolling back through this, but I have lots of amazing group chats. I have a business and career training module, and I also have a framework that's going to help you move forward. Again, understanding all of the unique needs and experiences that we have as Black women. There's an app, and there's lots of templates and guides and training and other resources to support you as you move forward. And so if you want to join, it's just $29 a month to get access to the entire community and the training and other great things like group coaching and other things. And if you join annually, you also get a free Career Love or Black Woman Bliss shirt as well. So that is all included. If you want to join, you can go to mercedesswan.com. You can see on the QR code. You can go to my profile or the link in the description. And all of that being said, it's time to go. Also, if you just want to try it out, you're not really sure, you can always join. I have a 14-day money back guarantee. And it's now 7:00, and my client's probably waiting on you. Love you. Bye. I'll see you all next time. And I hope you join me for the community. Let me know if you all have any questions. Okay. Bye.